Hello again. So this video is kind of a follow-up video to the previous video I did concerning the 10th house and the 6th house and finding a sense of meaning in one's profession or job or public life. And I wanted to clarify a few things because it occurred to me after I made the video that some of the things I said could be maybe misconstrued or misinterpreted. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the ninth lord and the ninth house in relationship to this sixth house principle. So, what I was principally illustrating was that the sixth house has to do with the meaning of the 10th house because it's the ninth from the 10th. So, it has to do with the meaning of both why a person may be doing what they're doing as a job or in terms of their actions in the world and connecting with public life. But it also, because of that, has to do with connecting to that meaning, feeling a sense of meaning in what they do. But what's interesting is Dharma, the ninth house principally, and then the fifth house secondarily. Dharma is not necessarily about feeling a sense of meaning behind one's profession or one's public life. Dharma just is the meaning of existence, and it's connecting with that meaning and living it out. So that's why a karma dharma adipati yoga, for example, where involving the 10th lord and the ninth lord, is very powerful because that means the person is going to be extremely active in their dharma. And if it's with the 10th lord is the actions and things that you just by necessity have to do and that are imposed upon you, so to speak, in a more objective manner. Whereas the fourth house would be more in a subjective manner. The fourth house, if the fourth lord were combining with the ninth or the fifth lord in the relevant lagna, because there's different rules for each lagna about how to form these yogas, then that's a more subjective, personal, inner pursuit of dharma. And in any case, my point is that, like when you have a yoga between the ninth and 10th lords, it's different. It's not about getting meaning out of the work you do. It's just about the work in the world that you do being inextricably and powerfully linked to your overall destiny. And that's why that yoga is so powerful. So it's not a good or a bad thing if a person doesn't derive meaning from the actions they have to do in the world, which is the sixth house as the ninth from the 10th. It's not good or bad. They're not failing or succeeding. It's just more that that's how their life is kind of set up, and that's sort of what's most likely to happen. So, returning to this chart, this is the chart of the person who had a very high sort of rank and a great responsibility and great respect in their profession, their job, but didn't necessarily really derive all that much meaning from their job. They didn't go after their job for meaning. And actually, they had recently revealed that when they were young, they could have gone to school for music. And they were actually a very good musician. They had gotten some kind of full scholarship, in fact, for music. And they really loved music, and that would have been a more fulfilling career for them. But for one reason or another, it did not transpire. And perhaps it didn't transpire because of their overall dharma that they were meant to do. And I don't want to say too much about this person or any of the charts I use just to respect privacy. But returning to this chart, we find that the ninth lord, moon, is in the sixth house, which is the house that has to do with, well, in this instance, meaning from profession. So the ninth lord being in the sixth house, I think on some level, and I'd have to, test this on some more charts, but to me it speaks here of a person who their ninth house dharma, right, is just going to be more important than the sixth house, which has to do with that meaning from career. And it's interesting too because Mars doesn't aspect that sixth house. So, as the lord of it, Mars Mars represents, not it doesn't show a natural connection for the purposes of manifestation of all things of the sixth house in the Rashi chart. And same thing with Mars not aspecting the first, having to do with the self-image and the mind and the quality of thinking, I should say, and the way the person approaches things, uh, more daily, everyday life. And so you also have Jupiter, the fifth lord, in the ninth, exalted, which is really quite an auspicious placement. And so what we see is that basically, Dharma and this person's meaning, this person's destiny, the meaning of their life, are much stronger than that sixth house as considered the ninth from the 10th. And so therefore you really have the moon as this Dharma planet influencing powerfully the nature of that sixth house. And so, again, the meaning behind the profession, connecting to that meaning, isn't going to be as important as perhaps acting and behaving more dharmically. On the other hand, this could also show that pursuing meaning in one's career could interfere with dharma. Although we don't really see that happening because of the analysis I gave before, where the sixth lord Mars is not connected to the 10th lord Sun, and it doesn't aspect either of those bhavas because it's an immutable sign, so it won't aspect cardinal or fixed signs, according to Jaimini. If we look at the 144 bhava yogas translated by Ernst Wilhelm here in the Kala software, these come from the Brihat Parashara Shastra. And I actually haven't looked at these before making this video, but the Lord of Fortune standing in the Rogue Bhava. The person has only a little fortune, devoid of happiness from maternal uncle, and always suffering through enemies. Well, I don't know too much about this person's history, but I certainly do think that they had a pretty rough life growing up in many ways, at least from what I remember, because I don't remember all the details. But they had a definite amount of really rough experiences and things like that. And a lot of those rough experiences definitely have influenced the way they have lived their life in the world. So in this situation, right, their dharma is inextricably linked to this sixth house and the difficulties that have beset them and so on. And then we see that in turn would have influenced um, obviously the matters pertaining to career because of what we've already said over and over again about the fifth house. Let's see what else we can find. The Lord of Offspring, which is Jupiter, Lord of the fifth, abiding in fortune, the ninth house. Children, a lustrous lord or like that, or an author of one's own accord, famous and illuminating the family. Jupiter is also the second lord, and so here we have wealth lord standing in Dharma Bhava, a rich person with zeal and diligence in undertakings, keen, sick in childhood but happy later, and going on pilgrimages, following religion, performing spiritual practices. Well, both those things are very true about this person. They have gone on some pilgrimages to faraway lands for religious purposes, and they did come to be very religious later on in life. And they have a pretty easy time completing and fulfilling their responsibilities and things like that. They did have a difficult childhood, right? But later, right, going on pilgrimages, following religion, and so on. And that has been very true. And then returning to the other yoga that we saw, the Lord of Offspring abiding in fortune. I'll read it again. Children, a lustrous lord or like that, or an author of one's own accord, famous and illuminating the family. Well, there are some difficulties indicated because of Ketu there, and because the Lord of Jupiter is standing in the sixth house. So not everything here is completely true, but these yogas are more just a guide. But I would say that this is a person who commands a lot of authority and respect in their profession, and is somebody that really can't help but just naturally sort of follow their dharma, their path in life. They're very much a person who just sort of naturally goes through the motions of life in a way that where they don't second guess things, where they don't get easily distracted by things that interfere with really who they are on a fundamental level. So in any case, if I examine these more, I could probably figure out a bit more about how they're reflected in the life. But I just wanted to make that clear that the sixth lord is not going to create. The sixth lord influencing or being with the tenth lord is not going to create a situation that's like a karma dharma adipati yoga. It's not the same thing. And pointing out one last thing that's interesting is that the moon as the ninth lord does aspect the 10th lord and vice versa via Rashi aspect. And while this isn't a yoga per se, it's not a dharma karma adipati yoga properly considered, it still indicates that this person is going to have a certain amount of fortune and great success in their profession, and that their profession is very much going to be very much more influenced by their dharma rather than what they'd like to, maybe what they would like to be doing for more personal fulfillment, which would happen if Mars, the lord of the sixth, were somehow aspecting the 10th or in a good configuration with the 10th lord and so on and so forth. And I haven't really explored it, but I think it'd also be fruitful and interesting to see if the sixth lord and the 10th lord, for example, were friends or enemies. Because, like, for example, here, Mars and the sun are friends. So if Mars and the sun were aspecting one another by Rashi aspect or whatever, then it would be more of an auspicious kind of thing happening. But if, for example, I'd have to think of a Lagna where the 10th Lord and the 6th are enemies. Of course, nothing's coming to mind at the moment. But, well, in any case, I'm sure there are a couple Lagnas where that's the case. And when that's the case, that would probably tell us something else about the profession and finding meaning in that profession. Like, they might find meaning, but it might come through a lot of hardship or difficulty, or they might find meaning, but it takes away from their overall success, and so on and so forth. Okay, so once again, thanks for watching, and have fun messing around with this technique.